Hello. In this video, we are looking at loops in Python. This is coming out of Chapter 2 from Automate the Boring Stuff. This is our third video for Chapter 2. The plan is to look at the basic structure of while loops and all the things that we can do with while loops and look at some example programs. Okay, so first I'm going to write down the basic picture of what a while loop looks like. So you have while and then some condition, a colon, and then code, code, code. Okay, and the order of operations here, so this condition, we'll just put an example, let's see, over here. So while, let's put something in here, we'll have a number, and while number is greater than 0, we could say number equals number plus 1. Okay, so that could be an example. All right. The order of operations is we first evaluate the condition. Okay, so we get in here and is number greater than 0? That is true. So there would be a true sitting there. And if it is true, then we're going to do the code. If condition is true, then run code. So our third here is, we could call that our step 3. And our step nothing is if condition is false, skip past code. So we'd skip to the next thing that's after the indented code. Okay, so if we look at this one here, what will happen? And let's say we print number. All right, so I am going to do something that we call play computer here. I don't actually want to run this, and you might be having an idea why. So play computer, we keep track of variables and where in the code we are. So let's just see what would happen. I'm going to keep variables, and then what would the screen look like as well as I run this code. All right, so I start and my cursor is here, number equal 10. What does that do? That creates a variable number, and I'm going to write its value like this. All right, so then the next thing happens is we evaluate this condition. Is number greater than 0? It is. So we're going to run the code inside the loop. We're on this line here. It's an assignment statement. What happens first in an assignment statement? The thing that happens is we evaluate what's over here. So what's over there is number plus 1, which is 11. And then once we have that value, we store that into number. So if I was writing this on the board, I would cross that out and put 11. Here I'm going to put, I'll put it like this. Okay, so first it was 10 and now it's 11. And there is a print, so I'm going to print the current value of the number, and the current value of the number is 11. All right, so with a while loop, we get to the end of the code. I haven't told you what happens. We go back and check the condition again. So we'll call that step 4, or we'll put it here as a step 4 that's after run the code. When finished with code, go back to step 1. Okay, so we just finished this right here. Now we're going to check this condition again. Is number greater than 0? The value of number I have over here, it is greater than 0. So I'm going to go and run this line again. Okay, but I run it with the new value of number. My number over here is 11. So when I do number plus 1, that's 12. Store that back into number. So I would update my value of number. Okay, so current value of number is now 12, and I print to the screen. All right, what happens after I run the code? We go back. So when I'm finished running the code, I go back to evaluate the condition. Is number greater than 0? The value of number I have recorded over here is 12. It is greater than 0. That's still true. So I'm going to go and do the code again. And what's going to happen is I would keep getting number. It goes up by 1 each time. I'll put it like that. So it goes up one each time, and then it gets printed. So this would go forever, and that is a good file name. If you happen to start to run this, then the thing that you want to do to stop a forever looping program is Control-C. So you hold down Control and press C. I just pressed it there and it interrupted me typing the command. So we can see what that looks like. Okay, so it got up to 226,000 before I was able to kill it. All right, so that's the basic structure of a while loop. There are a few, there are 2 additional things that we can do, and I'll put those as additional syntax. Additional control options. Okay, so there's something called break and there's something called continue. And these are statements that we can put inside of this code here. And one of them goes to the end of the loop and one of them goes back to the top of the loop. So break goes to the end of the loop. So that is skip past code. And this is normally you see the break inside of, this can be used inside of code. So it's inside of this code somewhere and there's a break. This one here is also inside of the code. And this one does go back to 1. Okay, and let's take a look at our forever. I'm going to call it forever 2 now. Okay, so I'm going to change this program to put a break or a continue. So let's say I put a break statement right here. The question is, what would happen? Would it still loop forever? What would we see on the screen? Pause the video and tell yourself an answer. Okay, so this one, let's go ahead and run it and see. we see 11, and that's because the break is there. So what break does is we're running through, instead of going back up to the top, break says we're done. Okay, what would change if I had break right there? There's no print statement because we called break before it. Now what if we print number down here? We have number equals 10 there. We check that the number is greater than 0. It is. We go ahead and increase the number, but the next thing we do is break, so we didn't print the number inside the loop. If we printed it here, we should still see 11. There's 11. Okay, what if I put the break here? What would we see? 10. All right, and the reason we see 10 is we skip everything. Nothing even happens inside the loop. It just immediately breaks. So maybe this one here is the most interesting. Okay, as another sort of strange case, what would happen if we put a continue here? So the rule for continue is it doesn't do the rest of the code in the loop, it goes straight back to the top. So if we have continue there, number is 10, it's greater than 0, so we're going to do the loop, but the first thing you have is continue. And so we go straight back up here without having done anything inside the loop. So the continue right here, it would just be continuing, it would be continually checking this condition and skipping this code. If we put continue here, then the number goes up by 1, but we don't do the printing. Okay, so the break tends to be used inside of a loop if we have something that we need to check inside of here that will tell us that it's done. So this would normally mean we're checking inside the loop to see if it should be done. Okay, and the continue, this would normally be used if we're checking whether to skip the code, rest of code, and go to next iteration of the loop. So the next iteration, the next time through, go and do it again. Okay, so this is a while loop. These are the rules that we have to play with. Now we're going to go and do some of these classic beginning programs with while loops. All right, so let's start with total. All right, so the goal here is add up numbers typed by user. And let's say that our example transcript would be like, so they're going to type some numbers, and then eventually they type -1, and then we print the total. In this case, it was 12. Okay. All right, so we can do this with a while loop. I want to get a number from the user. How do we do that? Let's assume this is an integer number. Okay, so we've got one number there. And then I want to keep going as long as number is not equal to -1. So the thing I'm going to do is, so as long as it's not -1, I'm going to keep asking. And let's go ahead and try that out just to make sure that works. So if you're not doing this already, it's a good idea to have two terminals open, or if you're using another text editor, you want to have your text editor open and running the program so you can see the program while you're running it. Okay, so this is called total. Let's see, 5, 7, -1. All right, so it successfully asked me numbers, and now I want to keep a total. And the thing to do here is, if you're going to add up numbers, then you start with 0. And sometimes it's not good to have the same name for a variable as your file name, so we'll call it just T for total. Okay? So now every time there's a number, as long as it's not -1, I'm going to add that number. And so did I get them all? What about the last one they typed? Let's just test it and see what we think. Or let's see, I wanted to test it or print it like total : T. Okay, so something you can do to check your whether you can do this play computer is do play computer with this now and pretend you type these numbers. What's it going to do? Let's see. Okay, it got the right total. And you can look at it to convince yourself that it'll work in general. All right, so this is a classic beginning program. You can use a while loop to keep asking the user for something until they type -1. All right, so that's total. If we wanted to print the average, then we need to know how many numbers there were. So we would say count equals 0. And every time we add a new number, count equals count plus 1. Okay, so we're counting how many different numbers are there, and then the average is just the total divided by how many. So this is also a common program that you might need to count how many times something happened, add stuff up, give the average. Let's see if that works. Yep. Okay. Let's see, we're going to push through. So we have the total and average programs. So I'm going to get us through a couple more programs here, and you're going to have to pause to read it, right? And to think about it in between me running it. All right, so we'll go with annoying y, and now we're going to have a while loop. So annoying y, the idea there was so the idea is ask y forever. Okay, so let's say that we want the program to ask y like that, and we can save their answer. Let's just pretend we're in the middle of some conversation with like a 3-year-old. All right, so if we want this to go forever, this would do that. The way a while loop works is you check the condition to see if it's true, and if you just put true there, that is true. So this will just happen forever. So why don't we start it off with a starter question. No, we'll just leave it like this. So let's just verify that that's how it will work. And there's nothing you can do. So Control C here will kill it. If we want to give a backdoor way to get out. So we're not going to tell the user this, but the programmer knows perhaps that if answer is 42, then how do we get out of this loop? So break gets out of the loop. And let's verify that that works. Okay, so that's your forever loop, where we're explicitly making it go forever, and then something inside of the loop is going to decide when we break out. Okay, so if you want a minute with that, pause. Now the next one on our list math practice and password checking. So these are programs that we already have. Let's do the password, and we'll call this password while.py. So we already had this program from before. If you need to pause to remember how it works, go ahead. So what I want to do now is here we ask the user and a password, and then we have some if-elifs to check whether they got it or not. So we could put in a loop here. So I'm going to move this up here. So as long as they're not logged in, I'm going to ask them this stuff. So that's part of my loop. That's part of my loop. I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, and then let's see, I'm going to say right here, if they did successfully log in, then I'm going to set that. So initially, this logged in, I'm using it as a Boolean here. It says whether they've successfully logged in or not. So while they haven't, I ask for the username, I ask for the password. If it's one of the combinations that's good, let them know and set that. Otherwise, we tell them wrong, and then this will just keep asking until they get it right. And then the user is whatever user ends up being in the end. Let's see. So user, let's type something wrong. It says wrong and it asks again. All right, so we ask for the information, and then we can have a condition here that says that we set. So we have just something that's true or false, and then it'll get set inside of, this is all code. That's all the body of the while loop. Okay, so we've got one more program to look at. If you wanted to look at this one a bit more, pause. And let's look at the math one. And we're going to call this math practice while. Okay, so this was asking for multiplication, and I'm going to make it a little bit simpler before we put in a loop. All right, so here they typed two numbers, we computed the product, we asked them what is this number times this other number, and we're keeping account of how many guesses it took. And if they got it, then great. If not, then wrong. So what I would like to do is I'm going to keep asking them as long as they're wrong. I can use the same thing as before. So I could say got it. I'll set that equal to false originally. And while not got it, I'm going to do this stuff. So this asks them for the guess. Let's see, I don't want that to happen inside of here. So I'm going to say guesses equals 0 because I'm counting something. I start at 0. And then every time they make another guess, I'm going to add 1. So if the guess equals the product, I let them know, and I want to set my got it equal to true. If they didn't get it, then it says wrong, and when you get to the bottom of a loop, what happens is it goes back up and it checks the condition again. And if we didn't do this, then this is still going to be false, meaning this is still going to be true, and we do it all again. Let's try it. Okay, so there's our loop, and it's the same kind of basic pattern as the other one. We're repeating something, and we just have a Boolean variable that we set inside the loop somewhere to say when we're going to be done. Okay, I'll leave that there. One other thing, we'll leave it there. Okay, right. So may as well take one more minute. We've got a picture of a flow chart here. So if you look in the book, you'll see this is a picture of a loop. So this is the condition here. So this loop here would be while spam is less than 0, print hello world, spam equals spam plus 1. So this is the code in my document, the stuff that's indented. And this is the condition. So if we wanted to, just so you can see it, so this flow chart would be spam was something originally, let's say 0, while spam is less than 5, that's the condition. Then if that is true, then we do whatever's over here. Print hello world and spam equals spam plus 1. And then we'd have here end and start. There could be other code before or after. Okay, so if you like pictures, or if you see this in other places, that's a flow chart, so you can see a picture, but this is what the code looks like. And this picture here looks like a loop. And we call these while things loops. The code for what we're doing here, I'll put a link in the description of the video or